We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, and 1410 KERI. Our guest by phone is a guest we've had on a few months ago, author, speaker, business consultant, political sage, Doug Johnson. Doug, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thanks, guys. It's great to be back.
You know, you did an article the other day that kind of fascinated me, which is why I called, on the Middle East. What's going on in the Middle East?
The Middle East is a mess, as we all know, and what we have is an administration trying to cover up their mistakes in foreign policy and foreign relations by keeping the press busy on other things. And I think we have a disaster on our hands over there. I think we have a president who went into office with the claims that he would make peace with the rest of the world, basically, and that he would change the level of discussion with other nations, and what we have is nations who are angrier at us now, it appears, than they were in the past.
But, Doug, doesn't he have a background having lived in a Muslim country where he can supposedly be able to reach across the aisle?
That's his claim, but hey, I find it interesting. You know, there is a concept that he embraces, and it seems the left generally embraces, that we need to continually apologize for things. And what they do not understand, I think this is really, really critical, they want to be friends with people. And as a nation, what we need first is respect. If people don't respect us, they're not going to be our friends. They're going to look down upon us. They're going to take advantage of us. They're going to manipulate us, just as we see them doing. I mean, when he gave his speech at the UN, essentially apologizing to the world for this YouTube video that was put out, I'm sure he basically had the rest of the world laughing at us, because the Muslim nations have admitted it was not the video that caused what happened. These were pre-planned attacks that murdered Americans and attacked us on what's sovereign American soil. And so, to me, it's much like a bully when you're a kid, and you have to learn how to deal with bullies. And you can either start apologizing and trying to kowtow to them, and you will always lose if you do that. Or you can stand up to them and create respect. And it's interesting, because when I was a little kid, I had that happen to me, and this is just so vivid in my mind, and I was about second grade. And my dad said, the only way you're going to handle this is you're going to stand up to him. And I said, what if I lose the fight? He said, it doesn't matter. You still stand up to him, and they'll still respect you. Well, I was lucky enough to win the fight, and I ended up with a friend for life out of it. And it doesn't necessarily mean you will be friends, but until there's respect, you really can't have true friendship.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. When I went in the Marines, I was told the same thing. I lost the fight, but I gained everybody's respect. You know, listening to a little bit of that speech the other day that President Obama gave at the UN, I just felt like I was listening to Neville Chamberlain in 1938 dealing with Nazi Germany.
Well, there are so many similarities, and what's ironic is this entire administration, this entire presidency, is so similar to what happened to Germany in the 30s. And I'm a big history buff, and every year I try to read at least a couple of really good books about what happened during the Holocaust, because it's so important to me. I've had so many Jewish friends, and my father and my uncles all fought in World War II, and so I grew up with a very great awareness of what happened there, and I have this opinion that we should never forget. And what I see this administration doing is the same kinds of things around the world, and even internally and domestically, that we saw the mistakes being made in Europe at that time. And the sad part is most people don't understand that we learn our best lessons if we study history and see what happened before, and then we avoid those.
You know, we can get a lot of respect if the president will let us show our power and let us change the rules of engagement. I think those are some key issues, because the United States has the power to end all these problems if we ever wanted to end them.
That's really interesting. I've had a philosophy for a long, long time, probably came from my father, that you go to war to win. You go into a fight to win. You don't go to just make an agreement where you're going to kind of all back off. And since World War II, there's not been a war we've really fought to win. And I think it's a mistake. When you have a war, I think we have the strength, we have the power, we have the military expertise. We should say to the military, look, here's the area, and take a map and circle that area on the map and say, this is where the problem is. You have X amount of time to fix it. Now go do it, and let them do their job. When we start handicapping our military by saying, here's rules of engagement. You can't go into a village and search for terrorists unless you give them 24-hour notice you're coming. You can't shoot if they don't do this. All these ridiculous rules they have to handicap our military. my heart goes out to these young men and women who go and represent our nation as our military to these places, and they basically are asked to fight a fight with their hands tied behind their back. And it's a mistake. If we went in strong and with force, you would end the discussion real fast because people would realize you don't mess with them.
Exactly.
And I'm going to go ahead.
Our guest by phone, author, political consultant, Doug Johnson.
You know, Doug, one of the things when you look at what's happening over in the Middle East, Israel's been planning an attack on Iran for, 10, 15, 20 years. And when they finally do attack, it's going to be a real disaster for somebody. And we need to stand up and get behind Israel, or the United States is going to be the next country to fall.
The greatest mistake, I believe, America can make is to turn its back on Israel and not support them. That does not mean we agree with everything they do. It does not mean we always go along with everything they do. But in general, supporting them, they are our strongest ally in the Middle East, maybe in the entire world. They are a beacon of freedom in the Middle East. No other nation is like them. Since Israel reformed as a nation in 1948, we have seen that entire area of the Middle East turn out to be totally different than anywhere else. You have a blossoming hub of industry and freedom and creativeness and all the things that go on. Israel is a shining star in a very dark area of the world, and we should look at that and say, this is the example the other nations over there should be following, not attacking. And it makes no sense for us not to support them, but we have an administration that does not support Israel, even though they give them lip service. That's all they do, and it breaks my heart. And I happen to just be a huge supporter of Israel because I think they're such a great ally. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a terrible thing to see what we're doing right now.
Do you think Israel will attack Iran before or after the election? And if it's before, what impact would it have on the election?
I don't know which they'll do. It would make sense they would do it before, in my mind, just because they know that it sends a message. On the flip side, because if Obama's reelected, they are really in hot water because Obama, I think, will abandon them even further in a second term. Right now, he's playing both sides against the middle just to try and get the Jewish vote. And I think you will see his attitude towards Israel change dramatically after the election. It won't be for the positive. So that's my opinion. The flip side, though, is if they go after the election, if Romney is elected, they would have the support of America and of the administration. And I think their fear is that they may not have the opportunity if Romney does not get elected.
You know, it's interesting, and you know they're debating this in Israel right now. My guess is they're going to go afterwards because if they go beforehand, there's a chance of helping Obama, and I don't think they want to do that. So
that's a very good point. And, I mean, it's always hard to guess what a government's going to do in foreign policy, and especially in war. And then when you try and do it with a foreign government, not just ours, it's really hard to guess. But I think that we're starting to see some breakdown of Obama's support among the Jewish community because they're starting to realize he's really not good for them. I noticed just recently former New York City Mayor Ed Koch has said he doesn't think Obama's a good president to support Israel, and yet he has, up till now, always felt Obama was the best choice for Israel. But I think he's trying to wake up to the fact that Obama's not really supporting Israel, and you're seeing more and more of that throughout that community.
You know, Doug, I got the feeling his speech was accommodating to Islam. It was obviously not pro-Israel, and you know, here it is in our own country. So much of what he does is anti-Christian, anti-Catholic, but yet he accommodates Islam.
Well, I think the three of us are really on the same page here today, because I agree with you, and it's very sad. But we also have to look at what his background is, and depending on what you believe, what we do know is that his book, his autobiography, Dreams from My Father, is a fraud. We have proof of that. David Moranis, the journalist who was openly an Obama supporter, wrote his book about Obama and actually cited over 36 lies, or we'll call them factual errors to be nice, in Obama's own autobiography. And more study has shown proof of a lot of things about his own life, that his claims keep changing what his background is and whatever. But what we do know, what we've seen from a lot of the things that have been looked at, and especially from the recent success of Dinesh D'Souza's movie 2016, Obama's brought up with a different background, different influences than most Americans. And as a result, he doesn't think of America or the world the same way that traditionally our candidates for president have. And I think Americans need to realize you have a man here who is steeped in ideology. My book, No Tomorrows, gets into some of this. He is steeped in the ideology of socialism and Marxism through Saul Alinsky, who was an avowed socialist Marxist. And he was actually hired by and trained by Alinsky's organization in Chicago as a community organizer, his upbringing was all in that same realm of influence. And so his view is that America needs to come down a few notches. We shouldn't be as powerful as we are. Our wealth should be distributed to the rest of the world. And when he talks about the 1%, really, I don't think he's talking so much about the 1% of taxpayers in America that are so wealthy. He's thinking of America as 1% of the world that is so wealthy, and our wealth as a nation needs to be distributed throughout the world to make us more equal.
And Doug, when we come back from the break, let's talk about your book, okay?
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.